Hi, welcome. It's a good thing we're starting again since a few people just came in. My name is Kate Stryker. I'm from Hudson Valley Pattern for Progress, and I'm here this evening to be presenting on the Middletown Community Campus Brownfield Opportunity Area Study. This is our second public meeting, and we are presenting, or I am presenting, some findings from our existing conditions analysis as well as our community engagement thus far. Just an agenda for the evening, I'm going to provide a project overview and update. I'm going to share some input that we have heard from the community. We've been out in the community having focus meetings on specific topics. We did a community survey. We've been at a few community events in the city, including the Discover America Festival 2 weeks ago and the Farmers Market, and we've been working with the steering committee. I'm also going to present some findings from the existing conditions. We looked at demographics for the area, economic conditions, housing, and then the specifics of the campus itself. When you see MCC in this presentation, that stands for the Middletown Community Campus. And then we're going to talk briefly about the strategic sites and the next steps for this project, and we'll end with a Q&A. This project is being led by the City of Middletown, Mayor DeStefano, and then Maria Bruni and Caitlin McNamara from the Office of Economic and Community Development. Susan Lanfried from the Department of State is our grant manager, and our team is from Hudson Valley Pattern for Progress. We're the consultant. Our CEO is Adam Bosch. On our team, we also have Elka Gottfried, Eric Pearson. I'm Kate Stryker, and we have Robin DeGroat, our Vice President of Operations. As I mentioned, we've been working with the steering committee since the start of the project. This committee is made up of various community leaders and representatives who bring perspectives of various issues to the committee and the planning process. We have a student from Faytien. We have staff from Faytien. We also have people from the public school district, business owners, and other stakeholders from the area. We've been meeting once a month. The committee's role is to basically be the ground truth in the project. They represent different interests. They really know what's going on in the community. They are checking the process as it goes along, giving feedback and input, and they're also helping with outreach and getting the word out about the project. For the project, we do have a website. This QR code leads to that website, but you can also just go to the City of Middletown website, and there you can link to the project. There are updates about the project. This presentation will be available at that website, and you can also sign up to join the email list on the website, and then you will receive notifications about the project as we go forward. So most of you are probably aware, but the Middletown Community Campus is on this map that you're looking at. The little blue area, it's actually a rather large area on the northwestern part of the city, right up against the town. And this campus was historically a psychiatric center, and now it's the site of Faytien College and other public, nonprofit, and private institutions and businesses. And for the study, we've actually, we've included the campus itself, but we've extended the boundary across Monhegan Avenue to include the housing authority and some businesses there. And the reason for that extension is one, because we wanted to have connectivity to the planned rail trail, which will one day extend up through that area. We also wanted to include a site there which may be contaminated and be one of our strategic sites for this plan. And also we wanted to include the housing authority so that they could benefit by being within the BOA. And I'm going to explain more about that in a second. Before I do, for those of you who are not familiar with what a brownfield is land that is known or suspected to have environmental contamination. Typically, brownfields are former industrial sites or gas stations, dry cleaners, factories, and there's many negative impacts to having brownfields. The number one issue is that they themselves are potentially causing, they have environmental hazards and therefore pose potential community health risks. but they also oftentimes remain vacant or underutilized for decades because they're expensive to clean up. They therefore can contribute to feelings of unsafety, disinvestment, and they're just not serving the community because they're remaining vacant. So the state has a Brownfield Opportunity Area Planning Program, which is what's funding. This is a grant through that program. And the purpose of this program is to develop a community-led vision for the area or the neighborhood, create development concepts for strategic sites that are either brownfields or just otherwise vacant and underutilized, identify site redevelopment opportunities and enhancements consistent with the community vision, and then also develop policies and other recommendations for the area at large. And in this case, we're talking about the Middletown Community Campus that I just showed you a picture of. This all results in the designation of the area as a Brownfield Opportunity Area, which then becomes eligible for certain state subsidies and support, and just becomes more competitive in state competitive grants and programs. So I just said some of this, but again, there's many benefits, including the cleanup of contamination in the neighborhood. Redevelopment can lead to the creation of new community assets. There's potential tax credits to offset the cost of remediation, cleanup of the site, and to encourage redevelopment of brownfield properties. And then designation of the BOA actually demonstrates community support for certain development, which can lead to expediency and reduced investment risks for developers. And the planning process is also, this is my sort of favorite part of this, is it's an opportunity for community building. So this evening, we're all here together. Through the steering committee, I've seen people who, they're all community leaders working for their community, but maybe they didn't know each other before. And I think there's sort of lasting benefits and relationships that come out of a planning process like this. We are wrapping up phase 1 of this process. So we had our kickoff meeting in January of this year. We've been busy doing data collection, all that community engagement work that I just mentioned. Through that process, we have developed a vision for the campus, which I'm going to read to you briefly. We have an analysis of the site and the city at large, and we've selected our strategic sites. We're moving into phase 2, where we're going to be working with the community on imagining what could be on the strategic sites, as well as developing recommendations and policy ideas for the campus at large. This all gets packaged together into a report. We present that again to the community for feedback, and then we will be submitting that to the state for designation end of next year. So that community vision. This vision was first developed with the input of the steering committee, and then it was actually included on a survey, which many of you may have participated in and given input on. We modified the vision based on that input, and this is the vision that we're using to sort of guide the development and planning process on the campus. And I'm going to read it. The Middletown Community Campus is a vibrant and inclusive space that serves as a central hub for education, innovation, culture, the arts, commerce, and outdoor recreation. It's a place where people live, work, and play, drawn to its unique outdoor features, natural beauty, educational offerings, cultural events, dining options, and serene atmosphere. The campus provides Middletown community with access to educational and vocational training, supporting local aspirations and career growth. Through its design, services, and events, the campus fosters connectivity between the site and the broader community. With excellent multimodal accessibility, welcoming pedestrians, cyclists, public transit users, and drivers, the campus is well connected to trails and roads. The site's historical significance is celebrated through a thoughtful architecture, informative signage, and special programming. Above all, the campus is a beloved cornerstone of the city of Middletown. So as I mentioned, there's a survey. The revisions to that came from the survey, but the survey also included some questions about people's perceptions of the Middletown Community Campus, what people value about the campus, and what people want to see on the campus. As far as perceptions, they were mixed. mostly positive, but not entirely. Most people, you can see these little images. I don't know if you can see them on the screen, but the top words were, it has, that people talked about its potential, its opportunity. They talked about community. But, some people described it as uninviting and scary. So I guess the finding from that is that the perceptions still vary. And so the relationship, if the goal is to really make the Middletown Community Campus a place for the community, there's work to do on how people are perceiving that campus. We also asked a question about, we're not looking at the right thing, about what people value. And the top hit was comments related to nature, greenery, trees, and open space. So the community really sees the campus as a park, a place to be utilized as a park. But there was also a lot of mention about people who use the services there, enjoy the services, they don't want to see them disappear. People talked about the community on the campus, the school, the college, culture, arts, education, performances, and then the medical center and related. When we asked people what they want to see, there was an emphasis on small scale, low intensity, commercial density. So people talked a lot about scale. They don't want to see huge new buildings, a continuation and expansion of services, similar to what people value. Community focus and opportunities to connect. The history of the campus was mentioned. We're going to talk more about that in a second. People talked about how historically the space was a green space for the community and really bringing that back. People talked about wanting improved walkways, pedestrian access and safety, wanting more arts and culture, and then there was some mentions of wanting housing as long as it is appropriate with the campus. So, as I mentioned, we also did focus meetings. The topics of these meetings came out of conversations with the steering committee. So far, we've done 4. We did one on cultural and arts programming at the campus. We did one on community learning, education, and recreation, one on honoring history, and one on bicycle and pedestrian access to, from, and on the campus. So from the cultural and arts programming, first of all, this is the first year that there is an arts and cultural festival. It happened last month. So there is some momentum in this direction already. There was many ideas. Some of them, not all of them, were a bicycle racing event, a food festival, arts in the park, winter holiday market. Just based on these conversations, it seems like people really see the campus as a place for potential in this area. We had a conversation about displaying art on the campus, either public art or maybe art that the college hosts. And we also talked about the challenges of having these kinds of programming, including advertising and communication, accessing the site, parking, security, restrooms, any sort of event planning questions and how to meet those needs on the campus. One idea that came out of this discussion was forming a working group that would, in their planning of events, communicate and work on communications and really workshop through the challenges event by event so that the site just becomes a better venue. In the community learning, education, and recreation meeting, there was consensus in the group that there's a need for adult programming in the city of Middletown. There's need for literacy programs, recreational programs, health and well-being programs, and family classes. We talked a fair amount about youth programs. The campus is unique in that because it does have a park-like setting. It's seen that maybe it could be a sort of safe place for children, unlike other places where kids have a little more autonomy, and therefore, there could be nature-based programs there, teaching about being an independent person, recreation, arts, and mentoring. And then this is sort of relevant to all of these, but the Kleiner building is one of our strategic sites, and the city just recently received a grant to do rehabilitation at the Kleiner building, and so the thinking is that this would be a great place to house some of these programs. So if you're not aware of the history of the campus, it's quite fascinating. We have Jerry Kleiner here in our meeting today. If you're interested, talk to him about it. He grew up on the campus and can tell you some fascinating stories. But the campus is historically for the city always been significant. It was a major employer. But then just in terms of medical history, it's interesting. It's got its own, it really deserves to be uplifted, this history, as far as for the city and the campus. There was renowned artists who lived on the campus. And so there's just been discussion in the steering committee and in this focus meeting about really uplifting that history, maybe with something as simple as a historical display, but maybe doing tours of the campus. It's something that really could be leveraged to attract visitors to the campus and just bring interest and, pride for the community about this unique place. Faytin was present. They had representatives at the meeting, and they talked about maybe the arts department could be involved somehow in collaborating on these efforts. And there could also be a possible public art project honoring the history of the campus. And then finally, we had a meeting about bicycle and pedestrian access and improving access. It's already used by many people as a running and bicycle destination. So really thinking about how to enhance that aspect of the campus. As I mentioned, there's going to be a rail trail that's 2 blocks away, so thinking about connectivity. And then on the other side of the campus, creating connectivity to the new reservoir trails. There was discussion about a need for improved bicycle infrastructure, bicycle lanes, bicycle racks, possibly designating some of the road space just for bikes and pedestrians. And also an idea came up for trying out a no car hours, just to sort of see how the campus would function without any vehicles. Okay, that was a lot. So now we're going to get into the existing conditions. And before I do, this is really just to give us a picture of the community that we're working in. This campus there's a fair amount of momentum on the campus already, with lots of new recent investments. The college there is expanding, but there's still a fair amount of opportunity there. As I'll show you in a few slides, many of the strategic sites we're looking at are publicly owned. So really thinking about what the needs are in the community and how this campus could serve the city at large. So starting off with, this is data for the city of Middletown. And I'll just point out that Middletown is unique in the Hudson Valley in that it's one of the few communities where the population is increasing pretty significantly. From 2010 to 2020, it grew by over 8%. Orange County, I think in that same period, was the fastest growing county in the state. Don't quote me on that, but pretty sure. The Hispanic population in Middletown is significant, makes up 44% of the population as of 2023. The rest of this data, besides that first data point, is from 2023. And relative to other communities, Middletown's population is pretty young, with 28% under 19 years old. And then the city is quite diverse, if you look at the right, as far as ethnicity. So this data is showing local economic measures and household data. If you look at the bar chart on the right, you'll see that in the left, the lighter blue is the income in 2013. This was the median household income in 2013. And then that number has been adjusted for inflation to have the same spending power as 2023. So even after adjustment, you can see that the median household income has increased pretty significantly in that time. It's actually increased more. If you look at the right side is showing Orange County, it's percentage-wise, it's increased more than in Orange County at large, although the median household income in Orange County continues to be quite, much higher than in the city. I'll say that's not atypical. Most urban areas have lower median incomes than their surrounding counties. But it's just interesting to note that the incomes are changing more quickly in Middletown. This data was, again, from 2023. The unemployment rate at that time was 3.8. That was close to what it was nationally. Per capita income, so this is an individual's income, the mean was $32,854, and the median home value in 2023 was $271. And that is all from census. So I'm going to show you some other housing data in a second, which is a little different because it's real estate data. This is a slide showing a picture of industry and the number of workers in different industries for both Orange County and Middletown. So down the list, we have agriculture, construction, manufacturing, wholesale. You can see those. On the far right, you can see the average wage for those different industries. And then if you look at the two blue columns, those are Middletown. The first is showing the number of people employed in that industry in the city. And then the second column is showing the percent of workforce. So I realize for those of you here and maybe at home, the slide's maybe a little bit hard to see, but I'll just point out a few things. The largest sector is for the city is educational services, healthcare, and social assistance. 26% of the workforce works in that sector, and the average wage at the county for that is $34,358. So not the highest salary or not the highest wage here, and 25% of the workforce is that. The next highest is retail trade, which makes up 14% of Middletown's workforce, and the county average wage for that was $42,000. And we're using county wages here because we're combining two data sources, and the average wage is not available at the municipal level. So the two largest sectors are not high-paying jobs. I mean, they're fine, but when we start talking about costs, you can see why some people might be challenged given the increased costs for housing in the area. This slide is showing on the left the commuting to work patterns in and out of Middletown. So workers who commute into Middletown, there's over 6,600 people. Again, this data is from 2022. People who live and work in the city, only about 1,500, and then about 12,000 people actually leave the city to go work. So it's sort of interesting just to think about where people are living and where they're working. And I'll just say, of course, some of those people who are living, they may be working remotely, so their job is not in the city, technically, although they may work from home. And I paired this with the percent of households who have indicated on a census survey that they don't own a vehicle in their household. You can see in Middletown it's almost 14%, which is rather high. So 14% of households don't have access to a car. You think about job opportunities and how for those people getting to work can be a real challenge. And so it really makes the case for locating more jobs in your urban center. And again, that's to compare with Orange County, where it's 8.6%. All right, so you guys hanging on in there? I realize there's a lot of data. This is showing what we call quintile data. So quintile 5, right? So what they do in this is they break all households into 5 groups. The lowest quintile, second quintile, third quintile, fourth quintile, highest. And they take the mean income, so that's the average. They take everyone in that quintile and they take an average of their income. And what this is showing, we'll just focus on Middletown for now. In 2013, people in the lowest quintile, the mean household income was just a little bit over $14,000. In 2023, and these numbers were adjusted for inflation, which means we're looking at the spending power of that dollar. If you look at 2023, there's been a decrease in the lowest quintile as far as household income by 7%. Now, if you go down to the bottom, second to bottom row, the highest quintile, not the top 5%, but the highest quintile, you can see in 2013, the mean household income for households in the highest quintile was $190,000, and in 2023 it was $216 plus thousand. So the change in that year was 14%. And again, that's adjusted for inflation. So if we hadn't adjusted it, the 2013 number for that last row would have been a little bit lower, because when you adjust it, it goes up. So what is the picture? What are we saying here? Why are we showing this? This is just showing that the people in the lowest income bracket, their life is getting harder, basically, because their income, their spending power has decreased. And meanwhile, people in the highest quintile, they're doing better. So you've probably heard that story, and here's some data to show this. This is true in most places in the United States. I haven't actually seen anywhere where it's not true, but the amount of difference does vary by community. As you can see here in Middletown, the lowest quintile, the decrease was 7%, whereas in the county at large, it was 3%. I will say in Middletown, the middle income brackets, they saw pretty significant increases. And again, these numbers are adjusted by inflation. So that's a good story. That's a positive, finding. I don't want it just to be grim. There's some good things going on here. And again, I'll just say a lot of this is macro forces. So these are, our national economy, even the global economy. Some of it's local, some of it's bigger than that. All right, so this is a similar story, but different. This is showing a comparison between Orange County and Middletown on income groups. The orange is Middletown. If you look at the top three, the farthest to the right, you'll see that Middletown has a smaller percentage of its population in those high-earning households. I don't think that's going to be surprising, again, given what I just said about urban versus county. Oh, sorry. Did I say orange? Green. I'm sorry. Green. I see orange, you see green. Just kidding. Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry. The green is Middletown and the blue is Orange County. Maybe I said orange for that reason. Anyway, so you see also that the lowest three income groups, Middletown just has a higher portion of the population in those groups. So what does this have to do with the BOA? Again, we're thinking about community needs and opportunities on the campus and thinking about what we want to create on that campus. And it should be informed by these numbers. So the story that I get from this is that we need better paying jobs. There's some other needs that we might need as well within the community. But again, I just want to reiterate, here you see these middle income groups gaining, and so there's also that story. So data's complex in the story it tells. All right, now we're going to look at housing for a bit. And why are we looking at housing? For a few reasons. One, housing is the biggest, structure. That's the largest number of structures in our community. It really determines people's lives, and I think there's just some interesting findings here. So not surprising, most of the housing stock in Middletown, I think about 66% was built before 1980. And why is that interesting? Well, older housing can be beautiful and charming. It's often better built than some of the newer stuff, but it also tends to have higher operating and maintenance costs, can be less energy efficient. Housing built before 1979 may have lead paint. There may be asbestos. There may be other hazards in the housing. So those are just factors to take into account when you're thinking about where people live, their challenges, and the costs that they're sort of facing. And again, most urban areas do have older housing stock because that's where the population centers were historically. This is showing the number of units in the structure. So this is, are we looking at single family homes? Are we looking at single family attached homes? 2-family, 3 or 4, all the way up to 50 or more units. Again, it's not surprising Middletown has just a greater percent of multifamily housing than the county. And yeah, that's sort of the point of this. And I'll just say, as far as housing costs, multifamily housing tends to be cheaper because you require less land and less walls to build it. So when we're thinking about affordability in urban areas, we often think about a higher density, and I'm not talking about 50 or more units, but we're talking about duplexes, fourplexes, just to reduce affordability, increase affordability, reduce housing costs. All right, another thing we look at is tenure, and tenure is whether the occupants of a housing unit are owners or renters. In Middletown, 53% of households are owner-occupied, 48% are renters. This data, again, is as of 2023. And this is interesting because renters typically have just less stability in their housing because they are subject to rent increases, they don't own the building. And so when you have a really high percentage of renters, the community may experience, less stability, which can present its own challenges. And again, it's very typical that the urban center would have a higher percent of renters than the county, and that's true here. We also look at household size, and I don't show it here, but the smaller the average household size is relative to the population, if the population stays level and household size keeps decreasing, what does that mean? Well, it means you have more households, which puts more pressure on housing units. So looking at household size is pretty important. I didn't do it over time here, but we will in the full report. But you can see that in Middletown, owner-occupied units, the household size is 3.38. Renters, it's actually smaller than at the county at 2.42. Okay, just a couple more on housing. This is Hudson Valley Pattern for Progress, my organization, which I think I failed to mention is a regional planning, policy, and educational organization. And we look at housing in depth. Every year we put out studies. This is actually pulled from one of our reports on medium sale price from 2017 to 2024. And you can see that in Orange County, the price, as is true across the Hudson Valley, increased dramatically. It went up by $200,000 in 7 years. So if you know anyone who's looking for housing, it's tough out there. And this also shows that on the right, wages have gone up by 2%, while rent has gone up by 4% in just 1 year. So think about the impact that has on the people who are trying to, stay in their apartments. Becomes challenging. All right, that's my big data dump, and now we're going to start looking at some slides of the campus. And we will have Q&A at the end of the presentation, So if you have questions, hold them for that. Okay, so this slide is showing infrastructure on the campus, including buildings, sidewalks and paths, roads, as well as the planned rail trail, which I just mentioned a few slides back. That's the green dotted line. That's the Heritage Trail, which crosses Orange County, goes through Middletown's downtown, and one day will hopefully, it will extend up there. I'm not going to add the word hopefully. It will extend up there. And so again, I mentioned we extended the BOA boundary to reach that because we want to think about connectivity to that, think about using the campus as a passageway to get over to the reservoir trails potentially, but also so that people who are on the campus can hop on that trail and get downtown, and vice versa. People who are downtown can hop on the trail and come to the campus. So really to enhance connectivity via trail. And as I mentioned, the campus is already utilized as a walking destination, as a biking destination. So one of the things we're thinking about is really how to build that out. The city has done some recent improvements. The road conditions on the campus are pretty good. In 2018, they received 2 grants, and they did road improvements from that. They also recently updated a water transmission main in 2020. There was the addition of some lights too, I think. And there's more work to do. And some of the input that we've heard from the community so far is that we need more lighting, we need more crosswalks, we need more sidewalks, we need better connectivity on and off the roads, the nearby roads. So since this is a brownfield study and we're going to be looking at strategic sites, one of the things we look at is the environmental conditions and potential environmental issues on the campus. So far we've used 2 sources to look at this. The first one is there was an environmental assessment done in 2015 for all the state-owned properties at that point. Those properties have all since been transferred to the city. And that phase one, they basically look at the history of the site, the current use of the site. They go in and they do just an eye analysis. They don't do any testing. They do interviews, and they say whether they think there's going to be environmental concerns at those sites. So those are the hash line sites. One of them is a former welding shop, a former power plant. The Kleiner building itself was found to have some potential issues, and the 54 building. Again, in that assessment, they were only looking at state-owned sites. And then we also looked at a building survey from 1997, and just based on the description of that survey, decided whether or not we think that they might have some issues. The big site that says former incinerator, that's a very large parcel. Most of that is outdoors, forests, and open space. There is a small incinerator on one little piece of that site, but because it's parcel data, it sort of captures the whole thing. Because it's one owner, it's one parcel, but it is just the potential for contamination is really just on one little area there. Yeah, so we're still sort of doing this investigation. I'll say across the street there, you'll see there's a former laundromat. As I mentioned up front, former laundromats are often, they become brownfields. So we're including that site. There's a couple manufacturing and an auto shop. This is a real broad brush look at environmental issues at this point. It's been informing our thinking about the strategic sites, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. As part of our analysis, we also look at land use. And the purpose of this is we're thinking about, and our next step is going to be really thinking about what we want to see on this campus. It's good to understand what's already there. So as you can see, and this data, by the way, this map was created using just tax code data for these sites. So your tax assessor has numbers for every parcel in the community, and those numbers are associated with certain uses, and also just what we know is happening on these sites. So all the light gray is basically vacant fields, woods. Again, people talk about the park-like setting. I don't think our idea is to go in and change much of that. People want to keep it that way for the most part. But there's also, the dark gray is showing vacant buildings. And then there's also some residential. I'll say on the upper two tan boxes, one of them is an apartment building. It's not actually on what's traditionally seen as the campus, but we included it so that they would benefit. We were thinking about, again, connectivity to the campus and wanting to include them. And then we also included the housing authority. So those two beige boxes aren't on what you sort of think of as a traditional campus. There are a few housing units, and there's student housing at the college, and there is also plans for much more student housing in one of the buildings owned by Fay Tien, the Tuckerman Hall, which I'm going to talk about in a second. What else about this? You can see there's a fair amount of commercial activity, especially along Monhagen. There's industrial activity across the street in that area. There's health and medical uses. That recreation is actually a basketball court, which belongs to the housing authority. And then there's a couple instances of storage on the campus. So on the topic of land use, just wanted to throw in this map that comes from the county's open space plan. It's pretty small here, but you'll see Middletown there on the left. And what they did in this plan is, in really thinking about future growth in the county, they identified what they're calling priority growth areas. And that's places where it makes sense to see more growth and more development because it's near existing transportation, existing infrastructure and services. And if you look at Middletown, the city, you can't see it this small, but if you zoom in, you would see that the community campus is basically in a priority growth area. It's in the developed area / priority growth area. So thinking about redeveloping there, thinking about enhancing it and upping the usage there is in line with the county's plan. Okay, the promised strategic sites. Right now, we have, I actually don't even know how many there are. I think there's 9, but let me count. 10 sites, good round number. The way we arrived at these sites is we looked at vacancy, we looked at ownership, we looked at the potential for environmental issues, we looked at size, and so I'll just go through them quickly. I'm going to go back and forth between these two. The first is that large parcel with the former incinerator. It is owned by Fei Tian. Has tremendous potential. It may just remain as forest and open space, but there is that former incinerator which could be cleaned up. Parts of it may be redeveloped. The other green box there is Tuckerman Hall, which Fei Tian owns. They have a plan to redevelop that as classrooms and student housing. But it would transform the campus because it's, I think, the largest building on the campus, and would just bring a lot of traffic to that part of the campus where right now there's not much. Across the street is that laundromat I mentioned. And then we have a bunch of city-owned sites. And that's great news because when they're city-owned, it means there's a lot of control over what can happen there. The most significant of those is the former power plant. If you've been to the campus, this is the building with the tall smokestack. What I've heard from people is we want to keep that intact. It's sort of iconic. It's sort of a landmark on the campus. It would be great to think about what could be done with that power plant. And it most likely, I'm going to say, assuredly, is a brownfield. So there will be tax credits available to remediate it and clean it up. It will be a process, though, and it will be expensive. So thinking about what's feasible in that structure is very important. Right across that little street from there is a former warehouse. I think it is also suspected to have contamination. Yep. And it's a pretty significantly sized building. I've heard lots of ideas about what people want there. Again, our next step is to really hear those ideas and think about feasibility. The Kleiner building is the former recreational building from the campus. That's the building that the city got $6 million from the state to rehabilitate. So we will see that transformed in the next few years. There's a site across the street from there where there was a building. It's been demolished, so now it's a blank canvas, and that is also city-owned. It's large. I think it's 3 acres. Yep, 3 acres, so not insignificant. There's a site that's actually a forever green site, and it's on our strategic list of sites, not because we want to see it developed, but because we really want to bring out its use as a green space. The 54 building is a former nurses' residency, also has suspected environmental issues. And then one of our sites is at the bottom, a coal ash field, which is where they dumped coal ash. And it actually is already being monitored, but it's included in this list because there's potential to do something with it. One idea that has come up is possibly building renewable energy sources of some kind there. I don't know if you're familiar with Beacon, but they converted their old landfill into a solar array, and now they're powering all the municipal buildings with that energy. So that's an option for that site. And that concludes my presentation. I'm going to go back to the phased map of our project so we can talk about next steps. So again, we've done a lot of work. Now we're really moving into thinking about those sites with the community and also developing recommendations for the campus at large. And we anticipate that this will go from now through May. And we're going to be doing some public tours of the campus, some public meetings where we invite people to come out and really workshop and develop visions and ideas for the campus and those sites. And now I'm going to open it up to questions. And I'll just say we have Caitlin and Maria and the mayor here, as well as Susan from the state. So you can also ask them questions.
All right. Yeah, I do have concerns about the green areas, and I've stated that before, and I noticed that some of that which is designated doesn't include some of the things I'd like to see designated. As far as the brownfield, with the regard to the old power plant, yes, that is probably incredibly contaminated. However, unless I'm not seeing correctly, there is a lot of metal in that building, steel and iron. And if it can be cleaned up, there's a revenue source there for whoever, for the city or whoever. In other words, so it's costing you money to remove the asbestos, the lead, heaven knows what else. But if it makes sense to, there has to be many tens of thousands of tons of steel in that building, you know, of equipment and things that are left from the process. I could be wrong, but you can get money for that.
All right, thank you. I hadn't heard that yet, so it's an interesting idea to be investigated. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Noni Kelly. I actually ran the Kleiner Center for about 20 years. So I'm very happy to see that this initiative is happening, because it's a shame that it closed in the manner it did. And there is a lot of value to having that building, and for the community to have it and offer chances for young people and older people to do things. That building is set up for it. Well, it was 20 years ago. I don't know now. But, and my friend Debbie also worked there as well. And, you know, it's really important to keep this. And I just want to thank you for doing it. It's unfortunate it has to cost $6 million now. It probably would have cost less then, but I'm glad it's happening.
It's not $6 million now. That's just
Oh, it's going to be more.
That's just the
yeah,
grant.
you know, that's just the initial phase of the first two grants. There's another grant that has been committed to us for $3.3 million. So it's going to bring the total to $10 million for the grants. The preliminary estimates on the building are $30 to $35 million for the rehab. But the ideas that we have about intergenerational programming, the county study for convention centers indicated that the county can handle, will sustain one large community convention center. Oh, it's too loud? Okay. One large community center, or convention center, of about 1,000 to 1,200 seats. On that Kleiner building, as you know, there's a 400+ seat auditorium. There's a large gymnasium. So we're already starting to talk to private companies about possibly partnering with the city on redeveloping the facility too. A $30 to $40 million project is not something that the city alone can handle, but the idea of the BOA, the tax credits, private investment, all will come together. We're in the infancy now, but it's not $6 million is not even close to handling what needs to be done there. So, but we did get some information on the building that I think will be favorable, because a lot of the remediation apparently was done back before they closed the building. But we're going to find out more as we get into the testing. We're in the preliminary stage now. We have brought on an engineering firm to start doing some of the analysis that needs to be done about the condition of the building and a pathway forward. But it's a couple of years down the road.
No, but it's still
Yeah. Good. Yeah, it's all good. And the building lays out beautiful. We're looking about our different programs, our senior, our recreational program, other community programming, bringing in other groups, local theaters. There's a lot that can be done, and there's a lot. The lady sitting directly behind you, she's from the Department of State. She's the grant lady, and we have a good relationship. They were involved with the DRI downtown, the $10 million here. So there are programs that are available. It's going to be how much this community wants to commit into that project. And I think the community is going to be supportive, and that's the purpose of all of this, is to get community input, and everybody has an idea what you would like to see. I think we know what we don't want to see. We don't want to see high-density housing. At least I'm speaking from the input that I've had. We don't want to see the greenery go away. Ask John Thompson. We want to make sure the open space stays in place. The buildings are rehabbed, as many as possible, and that's why we took control of the buildings. So we have that control basically of what's going to happen on the campus. And I think Kate touched on that at the beginning, is we're in a unique position where we can control our destiny on this property. So it's going to take a lot of community work, a lot of community input, and a lot of money. We'll get there, though. We'll get there, though. Thank you.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add? Okay, thank you. Mr. Lee?
Yeah, I was a little bit, I couldn't see clearly, but there is some contamination on some of the buildings. Which one is the laundry building?
So there's no established contamination on any of the buildings, but because of the current or past use of some of the sites, there's a possibility for contamination just because those uses typically are associated with it. So there hasn't actually been any testing of soils or water at this point. There is a laundromat that's not on the campus. It's actually across the street on Monhagen. And when we were working with the city and thinking about the boundary of the study area, we decided to include it just in case. It makes sense to include it as one of our strategic sites, knowing that laundromats and dry cleaners are often associated with that.
Okay, I got it.
It's a former large commercial laundry. Okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Gotcha.
right.
Yeah.
I run around over there quite a bit, and I want to make sure that I don't go do anything.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say,
All right.
I'll say about brownfields in urban areas, most urban centers, just because of historical use within those cities, have brownfields. I mean, there's nothing, I don't want anyone to be alarmed about what's there based on the use. The power plant is probably the most contaminated site, but nobody's going on that site at this point, and it will be remediated before it's redeveloped.
Hello, my name is Oliver Mantic. I wanted to know, is there any ideas of what the power plant could be used for?
There's been lots of ideas thrown out. Everything from an art museum, a theater, housing, community space, brewery. I would invite you to join our public sessions when we actually start planning what to do with that site. I will say, in this planning process, we come up with ideas, we hear from the community about what to do with it. It doesn't mean that's what will happen on those sites. A developer has to come in with the capital, and there has to be, we actually do a market analysis as part of our work, but they will come in and do a real market analysis. They're not going to invest millions and millions and millions of dollars unless they know it's going to be a feasible project. However, in order to access the tax credits that I mentioned in the presentation, the developer's plan has to align with the community vision. And so that vision that I read states pretty clearly what the community wants on the campus. And we will put together some development concepts for that site. And the proposal has to also align with that concept.
Thank you.
And again, we haven't scheduled those sessions yet, but if you signed our email list, we'll be sending out notifications when we do have those events. And please join us. Please tell your friends. The better the turnout, the more the plans we come up with will be representing of what the community wants.
Okay, my name is Sean Ling. So my question is actually regarding the area around the Kleiner Building and Tuckman Hall. Are there any plans for like additional parking or additional road expansion? I'm just wondering if you build out the community center and after renovation of Tuckman Hall, then maybe a lot more traffic going to the area. What's the plan for parking as well, road expansion?
I think that's a great question. I think as we start doing our strategic site planning, we'll need to look at parking as a question, certainly. I will say the city does have funding to do a transportation study of the campus as well. And I think that's sort of one of the questions they're going to be looking at is parking opportunities on the campus, near the campus, and accessing the campus, considering the potential that there will be more activity there.
Joseph Beckenbaugh. I've been associated with Phaeton College and the educational efforts. I noticed that as campuses develop with education, there's need for more and more city services. Is part of this project also considering where might be sited some public safety buildings, such as additional firefighter or police station or other items that will serve not just this campus, but the community around it?
Okay. I will let the mayor answer that.
Yes, two of the buildings over by the power plant, one will house the Middletown Fire Police, so you'll have basically a presence up there of the fire police. And the other building across the street will have a police presence and a police use. Will not be a 24/7 man facility. It'll be an evidence facility, but it'll have staffing in it. So there will be more of a police presence on campus. And that's underway now. Yeah, that's right.
Just question about emergency housing. Anything came up on that?
About emergency housing?
Yeah.
Yes, so right now there is Honor is on the campus. Is that what you're speaking about? Right now the plan is for them to stay. I don't know what the plan will be in the future. As I reported from the findings, people appreciate the services that are on the campus. So I think really thinking long term, coming up with a plan that's going to work for everybody. We haven't actually really discussed that topic in depth at this point. Yes. Chris from Honor is on our steering committee, so he's been part of all the conversations we've had so far. And yep.
What a beautiful clock behind us. But just a reminder for everyone to invite their communications providers to these discussions to make sure that we're at the forefront of technology with fiber optic and communications and infrastructure. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Anybody else? Jerry?
Thank you, Jerry Kleiner. Do you know if Rockland Psych is going to remain in the Schmitz building? I had people ask me the question that they had heard that they had like another 5-year lease, but after that they would be moving. I haven't heard that, so I don't know whether anyone's heard anything about that or not.
I don't know, Jerry. We can look into that though.
So when would the campus be connected to the rail trail, and where would the rail trail connect the campus to?
Where would the rail trail connect the campus? So the rail trail actually comes downtown. Mm-hmm. It goes through the old Woolworth building right over here. Not yet.
As of right now, it only comes to Railroad Avenue by the switch-in, but the plan is to have it snake through downtown through the rail trail building, Woolworths.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it goes through Orange County. I mean, it goes all the way to Goshen, right?
In the other direction, yeah. From where it connects, you enter at the switch, that will take you all the way to Goshen if you continue on that. But I don't know, Mayor, did you want to go into more?
You can go into more detail.
Well, I'll let Maria.
once it comes through downtown, it's going to head through up by Hanford Street, and then alongside Davidge Park, and then cross over Monhagen to the campus. The connection to the campus, and then connect also to the Reservoir Trail. So you're coming through like Hanford and going out through West Main, Davidge Park, and over to the campus.
And
It-
the trail will go out that Gracia Road.
Yeah.
The side rail will go out to off Oliver Avenue.
Yeah, and we actually have a couple people on our steering committee who are working on the rail trails for the county. So if you're interested in learning more about the planned trails, come speak with me afterwards. I can point you to some reports with plans and even put you in touch with people who are working on this.
Anyone else?
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much for coming. If you didn't do so, please sign the email list. We will send out notifications about the project and look forward to seeing you all at our next event. Thank you.